Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of The Source. Saturday, college football week 7, ton of games to go through. Obviously, I'm recording this before the Friday night FBS games have been played, so hopefully by the time you're watching this, we had ourselves a winning night. But yeah, ton of games to go through. Let's get into it.
Welcome to The Source. The Source. Source. Hey, get the Source.
First up, let's start in the Big Ten. We got Indiana on the road in the Big House to play Michigan. Michigan laying 33.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 45.5. So Indiana's actually a public dog in this one. The public's leaning towards the Hoosiers. A little bit of sharp action in on the Hoosiers as well. Line hasn't moved much. It was at 34 on Monday morning. It's sitting at 33.5 now. Really hard to make a case for Indiana here. The offense has just been non-existent. 102nd overall, 110th in effective rush, 71st in effective pass. They were held to just 17 points and 321 total yards on the road in Maryland in their last game. So you would think on the road in Michigan, they should be completely shut down. But Maryland's defense has actually been way better than you think this year. When everyone thinks of Maryland, they think of Tagovailoa, the explosive offense. But the defense has actually been great this year. They're ranked 24th overall, 16th in effective rush, 42nd in effective pass. Maryland just held Ohio State to 382 yards of offense. That was Ohio State at home coming off a bye. So I think Indiana getting 321 yards and scoring 17 points is actually a decent offensive performance. Now, on the road in Michigan, that's just insane. I mean, no way do I think this game's going to be competitive. But you got Indiana coming off a bye week. They've had 2 weeks to prep for this. Michigan just went on the road at Minnesota last week, and they go on the road to Michigan State next week. 33.5 points is a big number for a sandwich spot. Michigan beat up on Nebraska and Minnesota, 2 road games that they got up for. The 4 games before that, all home. 27-point win over ECU, 28 over UNLV, 25 over Bowling Green, 24 over Rutgers. So the 2 road games Michigan got up for, they blew the teams out. The other 4 games at home, I mean, 33.5 would have covered all 4. And on the fact that we might be looking at some shitty weather, and I'll take the 33.5 in this one. I mean, this isn't going to be one of my bigger bets, but I'll take Indiana plus 33.5 next game. Ohio State on the road in Purdue. Purdue catching 19.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 49.5, I'm sorry. So this line was at 20.5. It dropped to 19.5. Public's almost dead split 50-50 on this one. A little bit of sharp action in Ohio State, but it actually looks like the money is starting to tilt towards Purdue a bit. So huge news for the Buckeyes. It looks like star running back Trevion Henderson back on the field. His presence was definitely missed last week against Maryland. I know the final score was 37-17, but I was lucky as hell to get that Ohio State minus 19.5 cover. That was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. Ohio State couldn't get the run game going at all. 33 carries for just 62 yards as a team. Now, like I was saying earlier, Maryland's defense is a bit undervalued right now. They're better than people think. Their defense was bad last year, so people assume they have a bad defense again this year, but that's looking to be untrue. Regardless, Ohio State really needs Trevion Henderson back on the field. Having him back is huge. And Purdue's defense just hasn't shown us they can stop the run. I expect that defense to improve over time under Ryan Walters. I mean, we saw what he did with Illinois' defense, but maybe we have to start putting that on the list for next season because they're still just getting bulldozed week in and week out on the ground. Purdue's defense is 71st overall, 78th in effective rush, 65th in effective pass. Iowa just had 5.3 yards per carry on Purdue. Illinois just went on the road into Purdue and had 4.4 yards per carry. Wisconsin, Syracuse. I mean, Purdue hasn't stopped a single rushing attack yet this season. So Ohio State, coming off a bad game running the ball, they got their guy back, Henderson, in the backfield. You know they're going to make it a point to slam the football between the tackles, and I don't think Purdue can do a damn thing to stop it. On the other side of the ball, Hudson Card's just making too many mistakes, man. I mean, since conference play started, he's completing just 61.5% of his passes, 6.4 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. I just don't have a ton of confidence in Hudson Card right now. And Ohio State defensively, we can criticize Ohio State's offense all day, but the Buckeyes defense is a serious unit. They rank 7th overall, 12th in effective rush, 8th in effective pass. Ohio State's last 3 games were against Maryland, Notre Dame, and Western Kentucky. 3 talented offenses. They held those 3 teams to an average of 13.7 points per game. They're allowing just 10.2 points per game on the season. I don't expect Purdue's offense to do anything here. There may be some nasty weather in this one as well. I'm not really sure. I don't know how much that moves the needle for me. I'm expecting Ohio State to come out with a physical run game, and Purdue's offense in a bad weather against Ohio State's defense just sounds like a nightmare. So I'm most likely on the Buckeyes on this one. I may lay the points, or I may take Purdue team total under. I'll let you know on the live show tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Next game. Arkansas at Alabama. You got Alabama laying 20 points at home in Tuscaloosa. Total sitting at 46.5. So the early action actually came in on the Hogs on this one. Public was on Arkansas early, but it's definitely tilted back towards Alabama. As of Friday morning, it's looking like the public's on Alabama and the money's closer to even. So I'm sure you all already know this, but the streak is very much alive. 16 in a row. Since 2007, Alabama has beaten Arkansas 16 straight times. 10 of those 16 have come by more than 20 points. So Alabama has really beaten up on this Arkansas program. So I know at first glance, this point spread looks kind of crazy, right? Like, how are you going to lay 20 points to Arkansas, a team that played Ole Miss tough? They played Texas A&M tough. They played LSU tough. How are you going to lay 20 points to that team? But keep in mind, there's some matchup history involved in that point spread. I mean, Alabama usually beats up on Arkansas. Something I will say, though, last time KJ Jefferson went on the road to Tuscaloosa, he went off. 22 of 30, 326 yards and 3 touchdowns, 197.6 passer rating. KJ Jefferson is not intimidated by Alabama. I mean, he's been in the SEC playing in these big games for years now. He's played this team plenty of times. And I know you may be thinking, well, who cares what KJ Jefferson did against Alabama in 2021? The 2021 Alabama team is way better than this year's Alabama team. That's true offensively, but defensively, that is not true. This Alabama defense is even better. Alabama might have the best defense in the entire country right now. They're rated second overall, 20th in effective rush, first in effective pass. Nobody's really moving the ball on this Alabama team right now. Jackson Dart couldn't get much going through the air. Ole Miss did nothing on the ground as well. 29 carries, 56 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. I mean, so if you're banking on Rocket Sanders to get the run game going, I'm not sure about that. And all of a sudden, Alabama's offense is showing signs of life. I mean, I still probably wouldn't call it a top 25 offense, but it's not nearly as bad as it looked earlier in the season. I don't think I could do it with this Arkansas team, man. I don't want to spend too much time on this game because there's a good chance I may pass on this one. So I'd say over 46.5 is my favorite bet, but I'll let you know on the live show at 10:30 a.m. what my final decision is, but this isn't one that I particularly love. Next game. Let's talk ACC. Syracuse on the road at Florida State. The Noles are laying 17.5 points at home in this one. Total sitting at 56.5. Early action was all over Syracuse, but it's actually evened out. As of Friday morning, the public's pretty split even on this one. Money is still slightly leaning towards Syracuse, but it seems to be slowly moving back towards the Noles. This one's a hard pass for me right now. At this number, I feel like the move has to be Syracuse. I mean, they're going to be extremely undervalued coming off back-to-back bad losses. But the thing is, the same exact thing happened to Syracuse last year. They were 6-0, looked awesome, lost to Clemson, then their entire season fell apart, and you just couldn't bet them. So, I mean, it looks like the history's repeating itself with that. So this is most likely a pass. I mean, on the live show, we'll talk about this game, and maybe by then, tomorrow morning, I'll have something. But as of right now, it's a pass for me. Next game. How about some Pac-12? We got Cal on the road at Utah. Utes laying 11.5 points at home. That's actually down from 13.5, so some significant line movement in this one. Total sitting at 45. So like I said, we saw some significant line movement in this one. It's actually down to 11. I said 11.5. It's actually down to 11 now. Looks like we got a pros versus public setup brewing in this one. Public's taking the points with Cal. Sharp action seems to be laying them with Utah. So what do you know? Another Utah game and still no word about Cam Rising. I mean, he was a game time decision, 3 weeks ago? Still no word if he's going to play. Head coach Kyle Whittingham literally said, "We know the status of Cam Rising for Saturday's game, but we're not releasing it to the public." He said that. How stupid is that? I mean, blatantly disrespectful to the fans and all the surrounding media companies that cover college football. I'm not blaming Kyle Whittingham at all. I mean, he's just doing what he believes gives his team the best chance to win. Completely get it. They've got to update that rule. I mean, how is keeping a player's injury status a secret, using that as a strategy? How is that allowed? I mean, whatever. But anyway, we don't know if Cam Rising is going to play, which makes betting this game extremely difficult. The reason it's so difficult is because the Utah passing offense has been basically non-existent without Cam Rising. Utah's offense is ranked 95th in effective pass. I think some people thought Nate Johnson taking over a quarterback was going to help move things along. Really hasn't gone that well. In his last 2 games, Nate Johnson is just 17 of 40, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a 108.1 passer rating. Obviously, 109 passing yards per game on 5.45 yards per attempt isn't going to cut it. But one thing we do have to point out, he played UCLA, and we didn't know this at the time, but UCLA has established themselves as one of the best defenses in the country. Then he went on the road to Corvallis to play a really good Oregon State defense. When you take into account who the opponents were, these numbers don't look nearly as bad. I don't see how we can make an educated prediction of this game without knowing if Cam Rising is going to play, because if you take a look at Cal's defense, they're ranked 63rd overall, 27th in effective rush, 100th in effective pass. Cal is extremely vulnerable to the pass. That's why I bet Cal last week. I was like, oh, DJU's going to have to make plays through the air to cover this one because they'll take away the run. I'm definitely taking the points with Cal. DJU went ballistic. 19 of 25, 275 yards, 5 touchdowns, a 234 passer rating. He was basically perfect. Point being, Cal's got a good defensive front. They can stop the run, but that secondary is extremely beatable. So if Cam Rising plays, I'm definitely down to lay the points in Utah. I don't even care if it's his first game back. But the fact that we don't know, so obviously I'm going to pass for now. I'm going to say Utah minus 11 or pass. Tomorrow morning on the live show, hopefully we have an update, but knowing Kyle winning in, we probably won't. But there's a chance tomorrow morning on the live show I might just bet Utah minus 11, hoping that he plays. I'll let you know tomorrow morning, 10:30, next game. Let's talk some Big 12. We got TCU on the road at BYU. TCU laying 6. That number's up from 5, so they got TCU as significant road favorites in this one. Total sitting at 52.5.
Not sure why I said that. Sorry about that. It's BYU on the road at TCU.
So we're seeing what looks to be a little bit of reverse line movement in this one. Like I said, this number was at 5 on Monday morning. Moves up to 6 despite the public being heavy on BYU. Money's a little closer to even, so there's definitely some sharp action on TCU out there, but not much. Well, we got to start with the TCU offense because through week 4, TCU was 3-1, averaging over 38 points per game and 501 yards per game. Last 2 weeks, they're 0-2, averaging just 17.5 points per game, 415.5 yards per game. Those 2 games were against West Virginia and Iowa State. 2 decent defenses, but they're not defenses that should literally cut your points per game in half. And to make matters worse, quarterback Chandler Morris goes down with an injury in the 3rd quarter last week versus Iowa State. He's going to be out a while, I think 4 to 6 weeks. Just another item to add to the list of problems for TCU's offense, because when he got hurt, Iowa State was up 17-7 in the 3rd quarter. TCU had just 7 points up to that point in the game. The backup quarterback's name is Josh Hoover. He came in and threw an interception almost immediately, his first drive. After that, though, he was able to drive down the field and score a touchdown. The game was basically over at that point. They were down 27-7, but he did put a drive together, get down the field, and score a touchdown to make it 27-14. The point is, if you like TCU, after he threw the interception on the first drive, he wasn't terrible after that. I won't go as far to say he was good, but he wasn't terrible. TCU most likely going to have to lean a bit more on the run game than they originally planned. Their last home game was against West Virginia, and the run game didn't show up at all. This is a big reason why they lost that game. 38 carries, just 135 yards, 3.6 yards per carry. But here's the good news. That was against West Virginia, and the Mountaineers are playing some good defense right now. BYU's run defense has been a liability recently. They've gotten lit up on the ground in 3 straight games, allowing 5.2 yards per carry on 213.3 yards per game. Those games were against Cincinnati, Kansas, and Arkansas, so 3 solid offenses, but TCU's got a good rushing offense themselves. TCU's 31st in effective rush this year. So yeah, Chandler Morris is out and there's a backup quarterback starting, but I think TCU's still going to be able to run the ball in this game. Obviously, we already know what BYU's game plan is going to be defensively. They're going to crowd the box, dare Josh Hoover to beat him through the air. Same thing they did against Cincinnati. And in that game, Emory Jones made him pay for it a little, though. I mean, this isn't an amazing game, but by Emory Jones standards, this is a solid day throwing the ball. BYU actually did win that game 35-27, but they were outgained by 200 yards. 498 to 295. I mean, those 2 Cincinnati turnovers were backbreaking, cost them the game. Can this kid, Josh Hoover, make him pay for it? It's tough to say. I don't know much about him. But the fact that BYU's coming off a bye probably puts me on that side. But they're really a public dog, which I hate. And there's reverse line movement, which I hate. So I'll say BYU plus 6. I'm not betting this yet. I'll let you know on the live show what the final decision is, but I won't be on TCU. I'll say BYU or pass. Next game. Sticking in the Big 12, we're talking Kansas at Oklahoma State. Pokes are catching 3 points at home. That number's down from 3.5. total sitting at 56. So like I said, this line was at 3.5 on Monday morning, and the sharp action absolutely hammered Oklahoma State at that number. Dropped it down to 3. Since then, it's evened out. Pretty split down the middle. Public slightly leaning Kansas. Sharp action slightly leaning Oklahoma State. So let's start with some matchup history. Oklahoma State has taken 5 of the last 6. In fact, heading into last year's game, Oklahoma State had taken 12 straight. 12 in a row against Kansas. But Jayhawks got their revenge last year. They beat them 37-16, so Kansas beat them up good last year. So as far as this game goes, we got Kansas coming off a dominant win over UCF last week. They beat the hell out of UCF. Thing about this Kansas offense is everyone assumes it's a passing offense because they have Jalen Daniels, they have a star quarterback. It's not what Kansas is at all. Kansas has the 14th ranked offense in the FBS, 2nd in effective rush, 56th in effective pass. Kansas is running the ball on 63.23% of their snaps this year. That's 6th most in the FBS. Now, Jalen Daniels has missed the last 2 games due to injury. I'm sure they may have thrown it a bit more in those 2 games if he was in, but still, this is a run-first program to the max. Last week against UCF, Kansas ran the ball 51 times for 399 yards. That's not a typo. 309. They ran for 400 yards on UCF last week, 7.8 yards per carry. That run game is serious. Devin Neal, if you haven't heard of him, you will. He's one of the better running backs in the FBS. Want to know what Devin Neal did to this Oklahoma State defense last season? He went absolutely ballistic. Check this game out. 32 carries, 224 yards on the ground. 6 catches, 110 yards through the air. 334 yards from scrimmage against this Oklahoma State defense last year. But that game was at home in Kansas, where the Jayhawks are always much better. And last week's beatdown against UCF, that was also at home in Kansas. And UCF is terrible against the run. UCF's 112th in effective rush. I mean, that's the weakness of their team, is their run defense. Going on the road and trying to run the ball in this Oklahoma State defense is a different story. Oklahoma State's defense hasn't been as bad as you think this year. I mean, Oklahoma State's kind of been the punchline of jokes. They kind of silenced everybody with their win over Kansas State on Thursday. Might have been Friday night. I lost. Whatever night it was, I lost. But it's really the offense that has been struggling. They got the question marks at quarterback. They finally found their guy, but we'll talk about that in a second. But this defense hasn't been that bad. 53rd overall, 47th in effective pass, 58th in effective rush. Now, I know if you look at some of Oklahoma State's game logs, it doesn't look like they can stop the run. I mean, Kansas State just ran all over them last week, 38 carries, 220 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. But there's a couple factors here. Number one, Kansas State broke a 70-yard run in that game. Without that run, they actually only averaged 4.05 yards per carry. And number two, you got to think Mike Gundy's game plan was to let Kansas State run. When you draw up a defensive scheme against that Kansas State offense, you're worried about Will Howard in the passing attack. Mike Gundy knew if he could take that away and force Kansas State to run the ball, that they had a shot of pulling that upset off, and it worked. Kansas doesn't have Will Howard. Kansas quarterback is Jalen Daniels, and he's most likely not playing. He's listed as doubtful, which means Jason Bean is going to get the start. And he's a really tough dude to predict because he started the last 2 games and he's barely thrown the ball. 51.5% completions obviously isn't good. Just 113.5 pass yards per game, a 135 passer rating. But don't let these numbers fool you. I mean, he can throw the ball. He's a 5th-year senior. He started a lot of games for Kansas. He doesn't have the arm talent of Jalen Daniels, but he's had big days throwing the ball before. And guess what? Last year's game when Kansas beat up on Oklahoma State, want to know who was playing quarterback? It was Jason Bean. Jalen Daniels was out for that game. So Devin Neal's back, the guy who ripped Oklahoma State up. They got the same quarterback back. I mean, how do we not bet Kansas to beat him up again? I know Alan Bowman is showing signs of promise at quarterback for Oklahoma State. He officially won the job. He started and completed the last 2 games. Last week against Kansas State, he was decent. He didn't turn the ball over. He made a couple plays, 19 of 35, 235 yards. I think he'll continue to improve the rest of the season, but is he equipped to keep up with this Kansas offense? No. I know a lot of sharps are taking the points with Oklahoma State in this one. Good. Thanks for knocking it down to 3 for me because I'm on Kansas here. Give me Jayhawks -3. Next game. Let's talk some SEC. Texas A&M on the road in Knoxville to play Tennessee. Tennessee currently laying 3 points at home here. That number is down from 3.5. Total sitting at 55.5. So this line's been bouncing around a little. It was at 3. It jumped up to 3.5, and everyone seemed to hammer A&M at that number. It's now back down to 3. Public definitely still on Texas A&M. Something a little alarming here if you're on Texas A&M. What happened last week? This is supposed to be a defense we can trust. This is supposed to be a top 5 defense. How are you going to let Jalen Milroe do that to you? In the 4 games before that, Jalen Milroe was averaging just 209.5 yards per game. Against Texas A&M, he threw for 321 yards. And look at the A&M defense. I mean, they just laid 2 eggs here. In their other 4 games, they're allowing just 103.5 pass yards per game, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. But in the Alabama and Miami games, 347.5 yards per game through the air, more than double the yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. So what do these 2 games have in common, the Alabama and the Miami game? Well, those are the only 2 times Texas A&M has seen a top 40 offense this year. So both times they saw a top 40 offense, the secondary got absolutely cooked. So is Tennessee a top 40 offense? Yeah. They sure are. Vols are currently ranked 11th offensively according to BetaRank, 34th in effective pass, 3rd in effective rush. I know a lot of people are concerned with the drop-off in production of the Tennessee passing attack. I mean, obviously Hendon Hooker was setting the world on fire last year, and Joe Milton just isn't. Last year, Tennessee was 9th, 2nd, and 3rd in yards per game, yards per attempt, and effective pass. This year, 63rd, 67th, and 34th. But something that'll probably surprise you, you probably wouldn't have guessed this, but Tennessee has had an insanely difficult schedule as far as pass defenses go. Virginia is not a good team right now, but their strength is defending the pass. They played Austin Peay, who happens to be the #1 pass defense in the entire FCS. Florida's 24th. South Carolina's 19th. They played UTSA, who's all the way back at 96th. That was the game Tennessee went off. They won that game 45-14. In my opinion, Tennessee's offense is really undervalued right now, and they should attack that Texas A&M secondary, same way Miami and Alabama did. I'm a Max Johnson fan. He may be the backup quarterback, but I've said a number of times he's a backup quarterback with a ton of starting experience. That being said, last couple games have been really shaky. I mean, the Alabama game, I can understand. That defense is crazy, but he wasn't that good on the road in the Arkansas game either. And Arkansas secondary shouldn't be a secondary that gives you problems. Going on the road and trying to throw the ball in Knoxville on this Tennessee defense is not going to be easy. This defense is good. 29th overall, 36th in effective pass, 35th in effective rush. If going on the road to Arkansas was a problem for Max Johnson, then this one should definitely concern you if you're an Aggie fan. So not only do I like the spot for Joe Milton better than Max Johnson, but Tennessee's run game has been way better than Texas A&M's. I mean, Devin Achane is gone. They miss him a lot. He's on the Dolphins now, obviously. A&M's rushing attack has really gone downhill without him. Now, if you're on Tennessee, the thing that should worry you most about this matchup is the Texas A&M pass rush. They lead the entire FBS with 26 sacks. But you know what? Want to know who's second? Tennessee. Tennessee's tied for second with 22 sacks themselves, so the Vols have a badass pass rush themselves. And if you look at the pass protection numbers, Tennessee's offensive line has done a better job of protecting Milton. And then you add on the fact that Tennessee is 10-4 against the spread since 2021 as home favorites. I mean, man, this is a beautiful spot for Tennessee. You got Texas A&M coming off a heartbreaking, basically season-ending loss to Alabama. Now they go on the road to Knoxville to play Tennessee, who's coming off a bye week. Definitely on the Vols in this one. I'm down to lay the points. Give me Tennessee -3 next game. Florida at South Carolina, another SEC matchup here. South Carolina laying 2.5 points at home in Columbia. Total sitting at 51.5. Public's all over South Carolina heavy in this one. In fact, South Carolina -2.5 is one of the most public bets on the entire board this week. Line hasn't budged. I mean, it doesn't seem like the books are trying to sell any Florida +3 tickets. So the Gators have owned this matchup in recent years. Florida's 6-2 in their last 8 games against South Carolina, dating back to 2015. But on the road in Columbia, they're just 1-2 in their last 3. And they actually got their asses beat the last time they came here in 2021. South Carolina won that game 40-17. So the Gamecocks are off to a pretty disappointing start this year. They're 2-3 on the season. To be fair, all 3 of their losses came to top 25 teams, so I guess that's something to hang your hat on, but I mean, this team had high hopes coming into the season, and to have 3 losses already is definitely a letdown. Big reason for their problems is the defense. I mean, they've been getting lit up through the air, but again, we got to cut them some slack. I mean, they went on the road in Tennessee, on the road in Georgia, even their easy game, Mississippi State. Will Rogers can throw the ball. They have a passing attack. I mean, they also played Drake May in North Carolina. I don't think any secondary in the FBS has had such an unlucky schedule to start the season like South Carolina's has. And it doesn't get any easier for them because now they play another pass-first offense with another talented quarterback. I know not everyone is huge on Graham Mertz, but there's no question he's got a lot of arm talent and he's playing well this year. Florida's thrown the ball on 52.7% of their snaps this season, 37th in the FBS. Florida's going to be throwing the ball. And again, Graham Mertz has been pretty good. I mean, I think a lot of people just have it in their minds that Graham Mertz is terrible based on what we saw in Wisconsin, but he's been good this year. Florida's averaging 256.4 pass yards per game, 7.9 yards per attempt, 37th in effective pass. And look at Graham Mertz's passing numbers this year compared to his years at Wisconsin. At Wisconsin, he was completing just 59.5% of his passes, 29 touchdowns, 26 picks, 132 passer rating. This year, he's completing 80% of his passes, which I believe is second in the FBS, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 165 passer rating. South Carolina's secondary, he's going to have their hands full yet again with another dangerous passing attack. Now, on the other side, South Carolina's offense, I mean, they're kind of like Colorado. They're just very one-dimensional. They're 32nd in pass yards per game, 120th in rush yards per game, 18th in effective pass, 109th in effective rush. This is a pass-first offense all the way. They're completely reliant on the passing game. And personally, I don't think Florida's pass defense is very good, but there aren't really any numbers to show it because Florida's only seen one quarterback that's got a threatening passing attack right now, and he had a pretty good game on him. Joe Milton was 20 of 34, 287 yards on 143 passer rating. That was at home in the Swamp. On the road in Columbia against Spencer Rattler, who's not only coming off an ugly loss, but also coming off a bye week, it's tough to fade that. I mean, I think South Carolina is going to light Florida's defense up. The problem is, the public's heavy on South Carolina, like I said. One of the most public bets on the board. I never like to bet those. So I want to bet South Carolina, but it just feels so square. So I thought about the over instead. Total was at 53.5 Monday morning. Public's coming in on the over. It drops 3.5 points. Total sitting at an even 50 now. So I have nothing for this game right now. We'll go through it tomorrow morning on the live show. Hopefully, I have a bet by then. But this line not moving is really weirding me out. So I'll say, I don't know. I'll say over or pass for now. Next game. Going back to the Pac-12 for a big one here. Oregon on the road at Washington. Washington laying 3 points at home. 67.5. That's where the total is currently sitting. Not much action to go off here. Public split even. Money split even. Lines at 3. Hasn't moved. Straightforward. Line is 3. Pick who you like. Start with some matchup history. And these two teams are actually split 3-3 in their last 6 matchups. Washington beat them last year 37-34. But Oregon has actually won the last 2 times they came here to Husky Stadium. So you got to go back to 2017 to find the last time Washington beat Oregon at Husky Stadium. As far as how these two teams match up on the field, well, as you probably already know, Washington is pass first all the way with Michael Penix. They pass on 60.1% of their offensive snaps this year. That's 9th in the FBS. They're averaging 446.4 pass yards per game. That's first in the FBS. Michael Penix was excellent in the win over Oregon last year, and that one was on the road. He completed over 74% of his passes, 408 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and a 185 passer rating. So he cooked this Oregon defense last year. But as you know, if you follow Oregon football, they were 71st in effective pass last season. They were terrible against the pass last year. They went crazy in the transfer portal. They brought in a new edge rusher, 2 corners, and 2 safeties. 4 of the 5 main defensive backs for Oregon are brand new through the transfer portal this season, and so far it's been a night and day difference. Oregon went from 71st in effective pass last year to 23rd this year. They're 14th and 4th in pass yards allowed per game and yards per attempt allowed. So even though he's at home, things might not be quite as easy for Michael Penix in this one. On the other side, we got Bo Nix, and the fact that this game is being played on the road in Washington is a bad start for him. He's got much better numbers at home over the course of his collegiate career. Turnovers have been a problem on the road for Bo Nix. He's got 49 touchdowns to 4 picks at home with a 155.6 passer rating. On the road, 28 touchdowns, 15 interceptions with a 132.2 passer rating. Bo Nix was good in the Washington game last year. He completed 67.9% of his passes, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 175 passer rating. But again, that was at home in Oregon. On the road has been a different story for Bo Nix in the past. But fortunately for Oregon, this game is not Michael Penix versus Bo Nix. Unlike Washington, Oregon's got a run game, and a really good one at that. Oregon's averaging 6.2 yards per carry on the season. That's 3rd best in the country. They're 7th in effective rush. This is an elite rushing attack. The Washington Husky defense hasn't seen anything that can compare to the Oregon offense yet. Look at the offensive ranks of all of Washington's opponents this season. The best rushing attack they've seen is Cal, who's ranked 25th. The best passing attack they've seen is Arizona, who's ranked 32nd. Oregon's got the #1 rated offense in the entire country right now. 7th in effective rush, 6th in effective pass. So this will be the best run game Washington's defense has seen all year. It'll also be the best pass game Washington's defense has seen all year. Now, it's a rivalry game. It's huge. It's going to be back and forth. But no question, on paper, Oregon has the better team, and there's no reason why Oregon +3 shouldn't be the more valuable play here. Anything can happen in this wild-ass sport, but I'm definitely on the Ducks here. Give me Oregon +3 next game. Let's go back to the Big Ten. You got Iowa on the road in Madison to play Wisconsin. Wisconsin laying 10 points at home here. Total at 34.5. Books are expecting a real shootout, apparently. So early action was in on Iowa, but it's evened out now. Line did move up to 10, so we're looking at Wisconsin -10 now. We'll start with some matchup history, and Wisconsin's taken 4 of the last 6 against Iowa, and the home team's taken 4 straight in this series. So matchup history definitely favors Wisconsin because they've gotten the better of Iowa recently, and this game's at home in Madison. Straight up, this is an ultimate fade of Iowa with Deacon Hill at quarterback. I mean, they have no passing game at all. He's made 2 starts. He's completing 35.4% of his passes. I'm going to say that again. In 2 starts, he's completing 35.4% of his passes. He's averaging 112.5 yards per game, a 79.9 passer rating. That's bad on the NFL scale. The college football scale of 79.9 is like, what? This pass game is non-existent. Now you're expecting him to go on the road into Madison and move the ball in the Wisconsin defense? I mean, Wisconsin defense may have taken a small step backwards in their first year without Jim Leonard, but it's still Wisconsin's defense at home in Madison. They're ranked 20th in the country defensively. On the other side of the ball, I don't have a ton of faith in Wisconsin's offense right now. Tanner Mordecai has definitely been pretty disappointing recently, and Iowa's defense is definitely elite. But in my opinion, if Wisconsin hits 20 points, they cover this number. I don't think Iowa's going to see double digits in this one. I would love to bet the under, but at 34.5, that's just crazy. So I'm strongly considering betting Wisconsin this one. I'll say Wisconsin -10. I'll let you know what the final decision is on the live show, but I won't be on Iowa. It'll probably be Wisconsin -10. There's a few really good games I didn't have time to get to for this video. Notre Dame, USC, I'm slightly leaning USC. North Carolina, Miami is a big one as well. LSU, Auburn. I'm going to go through all these on the live show tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're able to make it, would like to see you in the comments. I think I have 19 games lined up for the show to go through. So 10:30 a.m., hopefully see you there. If you want my top bets, you want to join the Discord, parlays of the day, if you want to get in on the NFL giveaway competition, any of that, head over to KyleKirms.com. The information's right there on the homepage. College football, week 7. College football Saturday. We need a good one too, because college football's been killing me. We need to turn it around. Let's pick our spots, bet responsibly. Let's have ourselves a good one, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.